Put your hands up. Put your hands up. I said, put your hands up. The shrill scream echoed through the supermarket aisles as fluorescent lights glinted off the cold metal barrel aimed at his chest. Anthony Blackwell stood in the cereal and yogurt section, hands slowly rising to shoulder level, shock and anger fighting for control. I did nothing wrong, he said, voice calm, despite his pounding heart and surging adrenaline. Officer, there's been a misunderstanding. The young policeman badge reading Lawson stared red-faced, intense, gun unmoving. Misunderstanding. Do you think I'm crazy? Lawson snarled. You look suspicious. Your actions are suspicious. I've seen your kind, don't try to fool me. His contempt dripped from every word as he labeled Anthony a thief. Anthony Blackwell, FBI agent, stood humiliated gunpoint in a Saturday afternoon supermarket by a young local cop acting on prejudice. Stunned, he tried to piece together the minutes before this unbelievable scene. At 48, Anthony was a veteran agent of nearly 20 years, specialized in organized crime and counterterrorism. Respected for professionalism, integrity, and dedication, he'd risen through the FBI's ranks and returned to his hometown area's office near Riverbend, North Carolina. Riverbend, a small, racially diverse town, still harbored hidden and blatant biases. Anthony had overcome a working-class upbringing there, excelling in school, and achieving his dream of joining the Bureau. He believed in justice, facts, and fair treatment, and this gunpoint moment struck at everything he stood for. What made his story more personal was his childhood friend, now Chief Jonathan Bill Fields of the Riverbend Police Department. They'd grown up together, played basketball, and kept a bond of mutual respect, even as Anthony's FBI career pulled him away and Bill climbed the local ranks. That Saturday afternoon, Anthony was simply running errands and stopping by Riverbend Fresh Mart to pick up groceries for his wife, nothing more. The supermarket was crowded that Saturday afternoon. Anthony, of average build with graying hair, wore jeans, a shirt, and a light jacket, just another middle-aged man doing weekend shopping. He pushed his cart slowly through the aisles, gathering the items on his list. Officer Kevin Lawson, a young patrolman of the Riverbend Police Department, was making his rounds on foot. With less than a year on the force, he was overconfident, aggressive, and carried deep-seated racial biases. Lawson viewed black customers, especially those he didn't recognize, with automatic suspicion. When Lawson reached aisle 7, he spotted Anthony examining cereal boxes. To any neutral observer, nothing seemed amiss, but Lawson's prejudice told him otherwise. Who is this man? He doesn't live here, Lawson thought, convinced Anthony must be up to no good. Without a warrant or report of theft, he decided to confront him. Lawson strode over, tone immediately accusatory. Hey, you stop, he barked. Startled, Anthony turned his cart toward the officer. Yes, officer, he asked calmly. What are you doing here? Lawson demanded, as though shopping were a crime. I'm shopping, Anthony replied, puzzled. You look suspicious, Lawson sneered. I've been watching you since you came in. What are you loitering here for? I live in Riverbend, Anthony said steadily. Undeterred, Lawson growled. Don't lie to me. Show me your ID. Hand hovering near his holster, he pressed. Why, Anthony's patience thinned. I did nothing wrong. You have no reason to demand my papers. Lawson misread Anthony's composure as defiance. Red-faced, he shouted, You're resisting. An officer embraced himself for a fight that had begun long before either of them spoke. I have the right to search anyone I find suspicious. And you look suspicious. You look like you're about to run away or hide something. He stepped closer, the distance between them closing menacingly. I'm not resisting, Anthony said, voice low, trying to hold his composure despite the adrenaline pumping through him. As an FBI agent, he was trained for stressful, dangerous situations. But this was different, a combination of physical danger and a profound insult to his dignity. He stared into Lawson's eyes and saw fear, inexperience, arrogance, and most importantly, prejudice. Put your hands up. Put your hands up, I said. Put your hands up, Lawson yelled, voice raspy with tension and wounded pride. He had drawn his gun, pointing the cold metal barrel at Anthony's chest. Surrounded by cereal boxes and curious shoppers, Anthony obeyed, hands raised to shoulder height. The humiliation was indescribable, but beneath it burned a cold anger. Who did this officer think he was? What right did he have to treat him this way simply because of his skin color? In that moment of extreme tension, Anthony's years of FBI experience kicked in. Resist pointless against a prejudiced cop. Flash his badge useless if Lawson panicked. His best option was leverage. He hadn't yet used a personal connection. Bill. He needed to call Bill. Officer Anthony said every word, calm but firm. You're making a huge mistake. You're pointing a gun at someone you don't know. I want to talk to your chief. Lawson sneered, derision shining in his eyes. The chief? You think that scares me? It should, Anthony answered, gaze piercing. I'll call Sheriff Jonathan Fields. He's my good friend and he won't be happy about this. The color drained from Lawson's face. You're lying, he stammered, panic edging his voice. I'm not. Anthony slowly lowered one hand, still in view, then pulled his cell phone from his pocket. I'm calling him right now. Want to talk to him? Frozen Lawson watched as Anthony unlocked his phone and searched his contacts. The ring of the call seemed to echo in the silent aisle. Hello, Dave. What's up? Chief Fields' calm voice answered from the speaker. Hi, Bill, Anthony replied, voice steady but strained. I'm at the Riverbend Fresh Mart in aisle 7 next to the cereal. I'm having a little trouble with one of your officers. Trouble? Chief Fields' voice immediately grew serious. Officer Kevin Lawson. Anthony said, glancing at Lawson, who stood white-faced. He stopped me, said I looked suspicious, insulted me, and now he has a gun pointed at me just because I'm a black man shopping. I told him I wanted to talk to you, but he didn't believe me. On the other end of the line, Chief Fields was silent for a few seconds. Then his voice rang out deep and filled with cold anger Anthony had rarely heard from his friend. Pointed a gun at you just because. Dave, you stay right there. Don't do anything. I'll be there in a minute right now. Anthony ended the call and pocketed his phone, keeping his composure as he looked at Officer Lawson, whose face was as white as death and sweat beaded on his forehead. Lawson had heard enough to realize it was the sheriff, and that Anthony was talking about him and the gun. You really know the sheriff? Lawson stuttered, his voice shaking uncontrollably. I told you, Anthony replied coldly. He's on his way. I think you'll have a lot of explaining to do. Panic filled Lawson's face. His hands shook as he slowly lowered the gun and muttered, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. His apology spoke more of fear for his job than genuine remorse. About 5 minutes later, a police car without siren or lights pulled up, and Chief Jonathan Fields stepped inside. He wore plain clothes but carried the air of a leader. He scanned the lobby until he saw Anthony Blackwell tense in aisle 7 and Lawson pale and still clutching his gun. Chief Fields' face hardened with anger as he strode forward. Ignoring Lawson, he asked Anthony, Are you okay? Did he do anything to you? I'm fine, Bill, Anthony said, still taken aback. He just pointed a gun at me and insulted me. Chief Fields turned to Lawson, eyes cold with frustration. Officer Lawson, what are you doing here with a gun in your hand? What are you doing with federal agent Anthony Blackwell? Lawson froze again, even more than before. All his prejudices collapsed when he realized whom he faced. Chief, I don't know. I swear I don't know. Chief Fields' voice dripped contempt. You don't know, or you don't care to know. You acted on your own prejudices. You pointed a gun at an innocent citizen, a friend of mine, a federal agent in the middle of a supermarket because you thought he was suspicious. He stepped closer to Lawson. Turn in your gun now slowly, then hand me your badge and radio. Back to the station, immediately straight to my office. You are suspended, effective immediately. Lawson obeyed, shaking as he holstered his weapon and handed over his badge and radio. Tears rolled down his sweat-streaked face as he whispered, Chief, I'm sorry, Agent Blackwell, I was wrong. Please forgive me. Anthony said nothing. The apology was born of fear, not understanding. Chief Fields signaled arriving officers and led Lawson away as Lawson muttered more apologies. When Lawson was gone, Chief Fields turned back to Anthony, sighing with fatigue and disappointment. Dave, I'm so sorry you had to go through this. I can't believe any officer under my command would act like that, especially not to you. It's okay, Bill, Anthony said, though he still felt the sting of humiliation and disbelief. I'm fine, but Bill, you need to review your hiring and training process. If he dared to do that to me, someone he didn't know, what do you think he would do to others who don't have my resources? Chief Fields nodded solemnly. I understand. I will see this through to the end. I will not tolerate such behavior in my department. Never. Immediately upon returning to headquarters, Chief Fields ordered the Internal Affairs A2A Division to open a formal urgent investigation into Officer Lawson's conduct. The IA Division Chief, a trusted impartial investigator, was assigned the case, and under the chief's close supervision, the inquiry proceeded both thoroughly and swiftly. Special Agent Blackwell was interviewed first. With the composure of a veteran investigator, he gave a clear, unemotional account of Lawson's approach, the officer's discriminatory remarks, and the unjustified drawing of his weapon. Next, Officer Lawson, fearful and desperate, attempted to defend himself. He claimed Blackwell looked suspicious and that he felt threatened when Blackwell reached for his phone, even though Blackwell only did so after being held at gunpoint. Lawson's stammered apologies made it clear his priority was saving his career, not admitting wrongdoing. Crucially, Riverbend Fresh Mart's security cameras had captured the entire incident from multiple angles. Although audio was faint, the video distinctly showed Lawson's aggressive posture, his unprovoked pointing of a firearm at Blackwell, and Blackwell's calm phone call to Chief Fields and Lawson's panicked reaction. Witness statements from store employees and customers corroborated that Lawson had instigated the encounter without cause. The IEA report, completed quickly, given the severity of the evidence, found that Officer Lawson had violated numerous department policies, engaging in racist language and behavior, abusing his authority by stopping and demanding identification without reasonable suspicion, and employing deadly force against an unarmed citizen. His dishonesty during the investigation, attempting to justify his actions, further aggravated the breach of trust. The report recommended the highest discipline dismissal. The case was then forwarded to the department's disciplinary review board, chaired by Chief Fields, with the IYA chief and other senior officers ready to render final judgment. At the hearing, the IYA chief presented the full investigation report and reviewed the security camera footage in detail. Special Agent Anthony Blackwell, as both victim and federal officer, chose not to appear in person, but submitted a written statement describing how it felt to be treated like a criminal in his hometown simply because of his skin color. He emphasized the dangers of prejudice and power abused by police, arguing that such behavior destroys community trust and cannot be tolerated. Blackwell made clear that an officer with the attitude and conduct of Kevin Lawson does not deserve a badge or the responsibility of protecting the public. Officer Kevin Lawson attended the hearing with his attorney. He watched the video evidence and listened to the report, unable to deny what had happened. He repeatedly apologized and tried to show remorse, but his words betrayed fear of the consequences. His attorney urged leniency, citing Lawson's youth inexperience and stress, even though Lawson himself had caused that stress through his actions. The disciplinary review board listened carefully, revisiting the evidence and weighing the seriousness of Lawson's unreasonable use of deadly force, abuse of authority, discriminatory conduct, and dishonesty. They noted that his actions were clearly recorded on video and that the victim was not only a federal agent, but also the chief's close friend, underscoring the need for decisive discipline to maintain departmental integrity and public trust. Chief Fields, as board chairman, was stern and uncompromising, making clear that such behavior has no place in the Riverbend Police Department. By unanimous resolution, the board found that Officer Lawson's conduct constituted a core violation of the department's code of ethics and policies. His unreasonable use of deadly force, blatant abuse of authority, and racial bias proved him unfit to serve. The board announced his immediate termination from the department. Lawson sat white-faced and devastated, having lost his job, career, and reputation. His panic-stricken apologies rang hollow. Afterward, Chief Fields spoke privately with Anthony, expressing relief that justice had been served and reaffirming his commitment to rooting out misconduct. Anthony thanked him for handling the case swiftly and with integrity. The department issued a brief press release announcing Lawson's termination following an internal investigation into serious misconduct. To protect privacy, it did not detail the incident with the FBI agent, but emphasized the department's dedication to the highest standards of ethics and professionalism. Though not a national headline, word spread quickly within law enforcement circles about the young officer who pointed a gun at a black FBI agent out of prejudice and was immediately fired. For Lawson, losing his job also cost him his pension and prospects in any other agency, and he now faces a potential civil lawsuit from Anthony Blackwell. For Blackwell, the ordeal was a painful reminder that prejudice and abuse of power persist even in small towns. Yet by remaining calm, using his resources, and seeing Lawson held accountable, he felt a hard-won sense of satisfaction and justice, not only for himself, but for anyone else victimized by similar acts without the means to defend themselves. His long-standing friendship with the chief, a man of unquestioned integrity, proved pivotal in ensuring that justice was served swiftly and decisively. The story of a federal special agent forced to defend his rights in a local supermarket aisle reminds us that racial bias and abuse of power are not relics of the past. They can surface in even the most ordinary encounters with profound consequences. This incident lays bare the danger of allowing prejudice to cloud judgment and erode professionalism in law enforcement. It also highlights the level of accountability required from those entrusted with public safety. By standing her ground and making the call that brought the chief to the scene, the agent transformed a moment of personal danger and humiliation into a clear victory for justice. Officer Lawson's immediate termination sent a strong message: discriminatory behavior and unjustified use of force will not be tolerated. Yet one firing alone cannot erase the systemic issues that permit such misconduct. To prevent future abuses, departments must strengthen bias awareness training, improve vetting and psychological evaluation processes, and foster transparent oversight by independent review boards. 1 year later, the small town of Riverbend still hums with quiet change. The supermarket aisle where a federal agent once faced a drawn weapon now hosts a commemorative plaque reminding customers that dignity demands respect. The police department, under new leadership, opened its doors to community forums on bias and built a mentorship program pairing seasoned officers with recruits to reinforce respectful conduct. Chief Fields' reforms, mandatory de-escalation training, regular psychological evaluations, and an independent civilian review board have become a model discussed in neighboring counties. Special Agent Blackwell returned to the same aisles more comfortably, though he still pauses by the urn-shaped display there, a personal testament to his resolve. He now lectures at the State Academy on civil rights and ethical policing, sharing his story to inspire both law enforcement and civilians. The former officer who raised the gun was quietly dismissed and faces a pending civil suit. His name has become a cautionary tale rather than a badge of authority. In Riverbend schools, students study the incident alongside lessons on citizenship and equality, ensuring that new generations understand the cost of unchecked prejudice. Though the headline "Riverbend Justice" has faded from national feeds, its spirit endures in every policy change, community gathering, and classroom discussion. 1 year on justice in Riverbend is measured not by a single firing, but by the steady work of rebuilding trust proof that a community can choose honor over fear, even long after a gun has been lowered. 6 months after the supermarket incident, Riverbend's quiet streets still carry the hum of change. Officer recruits now spend their first week of training immersed in community listening sessions, where residents share stories of bias and resilience. In the bright meeting room of the police station, portraits of Chief Fields and Special Agent Blackwell hang side by side, symbols of partnership rather than distance. The once empty board by the memorial wall now displays letters from neighbors thanking the department for its reforms, updated use of force protocols, mandatory body cam reviews, and clear channels for reporting misconduct. Local teens volunteer as ride-along ambassadors, joining officers on patrol to bridge generational and cultural divides. Inside Riverbend Fresh Mart, the aisle where Anthony Blackwell raised his hands remains unchanged, except for a small sign on the end cap, "Respect lives here." Store managers report fewer security calls and more smiles, a subtle proof that atmosphere matters. Blackwell himself returns monthly, not for groceries, but for a brief moment of acknowledgement, shaking hands with shoppers who recognize him. Meanwhile, the fired officer's lawsuit has settled quietly, but its real impact rippled far beyond court papers. Neighboring towns reached out to Chief Fields, adopting Riverbend's blueprint for bias training and independent oversight. At the state capitol, lawmakers cited the case when drafting stronger protections against racial profiling. 6 months on Riverbend still feels the weight of what happened, but it carries that weight forward as purpose. A community once shaken by prejudice now stands more vigilant, more compassionate, and ever committed to the promise that every person, no matter where they walk, will be met with dignity rather than suspicion. From this story, we learn that the power of composure knowledge and personal connection can overcome stereotyping and abuse of power. The message is, when the system demands you bow your head, stand tall, and use truth and justice to force the oppressor to confront their wrongdoing. If I were the protagonist, once the incident settled, I would establish a legal aid fund for victims of discrimination and collaborate with civilian oversight groups to develop mandatory anti-bias training for law enforcement. Looking ahead to 2050, although younger generations will make strides, police racial prejudice may diminish significantly, but is unlikely to vanish entirely unless we remain vigilant and active. Only when communities commit to continual oversight, education, and reform of laws can we hope for a future without firearms aimed at innocent people because of their skin color. Disclaimer: this story is entirely fictional. All characters and events are creations of the author and are not intended to reference or criticize any real person. It is designed to raise awareness of responsibility, justice, and the importance of treating one another with respect and dignity. We firmly oppose all forms of violence, prejudice, and injustice. Please consider this before viewing.